From the moment humans first raised a watchtower above a river, they began to understand a hard truth. Geography is destiny. Strongholds are not born of steel and slogans alone. They are born where land meets need, where water meets road, where runway meets range, where supply meets strategy. This film traces the long arc of that truth, how strategic strongholds shaped global power, how they rose from necessity, how they adapted to technology, and sometimes how they faded when the world changed. It is a story of terrain, logistics, psychology, and the quiet, stubborn laws of place that have humbled empires time and again. Imagine a map drawn not with borders, but with lines of access. Rivers that feed cities become arteries of commerce and control. Mountain passes that narrow movement become choke points of defense. Lowlands that carry fields become staging grounds for armies. Throughout history, civilizations that grasped these patterns built lasting influence. They built forts by rivers, ports on coasts, and later, after flight conquered distance, bases on plains and islands. Each stronghold was an expression of human ingenuity applied to the constraints of nature. Early examples are simple and instructive. In Mesopotamia, control of river junctures allowed city-states to prosper and defend themselves. In the medieval world, castles were placed to dominate valleys and roads. Fortified cities on trade routes flourished because they could tax, protect, and channel commerce. The logic is consistent. Where movement funnels, power concentrates. As technology evolved, so did strongholds. The age of sail turned ports into global hubs. The age of steam extended their reach. The 20th century's mastery of the sky created a new class of strategic sites, places where reach became instantaneous, and supply lines needed to be both fast and reliable. Large-scale conflicts taught another critical lesson. Logistics win wars. Armies march on their stomachs, but air fleets fly on fuel and parts. A runway alone is only useful if the pipeline behind it is steady. The fuel, the maintenance crews, the spare parts, the maps, and the communications. The efficiency of these supply chains turns smaller installations into strategic nodes capable of shaping distant theaters. Nations invested in networks of these nodes, creating webs that allowed them to project influence beyond immediate borders. The story of these networks is the story of modern geopolitics. Yet geography is not a passive stage. It forces innovation and punishes arrogance. Regions of extreme climate or complex terrain reshape the engineering that supports them. High altitudes require different aircraft performance. Deserts require cooling and dust protection. Islands demand careful fuel logistics. These conditions form constraints that planners must respect. When they fail to do so, when leaders assume technology can erase friction with nature, the cost can be extraordinary. The phrase "the graveyard of empires," often invoked for certain regions, is less a poetic jab and more a geographic diagnosis. In places where terrain, climate, and local endurance align against external power, even the most advanced technology finds limits. The human dimension matters as much as the physical. Strategic strongholds are not isolated outposts. They exist within social environments. The relationship between a base and its host region can determine long-term utility. Strongholds that integrate offering medical care, employment, and infrastructure often generate local legitimacy. Those that remain isolated tend to become points of friction. In history, successful long-term installations functioned as nodes of exchange. Economic activity increased, local roads were built, trade flowed, and cultural contact deepened. Conversely, bases that prioritized control over cooperation created resentment and instability, turning logistical assets into political liabilities. The evolution of strongholds also mirrors technological change. Early airfields were simple grass strips. Then came concrete runways, hangars, and protective revetments. Later, entire complexes with radar, arrays, munitions depots, hospitals, and schools developed. These became small cities supporting thousands of people, a mix of military personnel, contractors, and families. The infrastructure investments made these sites powerful, but also expensive. As the cost of maintaining large, permanent installations rose, planners began to explore alternatives, more mobile platforms, rotational deployments, and dual-use facilities that could serve civilian and military needs. The future of strongholds increasingly emphasizes flexibility rather than permanence. Sometimes, a single location becomes an icon, a symbol of power projection. That symbolism can be strategic beyond any map. It projects intent, reassures allies, and deters adversaries. But symbolism can be brittle. Political shifts, public opinion, and strategic recalibrations can change the calculus overnight. A once celebrated hub can be downsized or abandoned when alliances shift or budgets tighten. In many regions, remains of these installations become historical markers, teaching future generations about the ebb and flow of power. Failures, as much as achievements, offer lessons. When logistics are neglected for grand strategy, the supply chain becomes the failure point. When local culture is ignored, legitimacy evaporates. When engineering misreads the environment, operations become inefficient or impossible. There are many documented instances where a site designed for rapid response became a liability under sustained pressure. Conversely, success often depended on adaptability, bases that could evolve, adding facilities, reconfiguring operations, and engaging communities remained relevant. In many ways, the story of strongholds is the story of organizational learning under harsh conditions. Achievements born from the needs of strategic strongholds have had profound peacetime benefits. Technologies developed to keep aircraft flying in extreme conditions improved commercial aviation. Medical facilities built for personnel sometimes became regional centers for care. Road and port upgrades for operational needs facilitated civilian commerce. Knowledge about logistics, emergency response, and infrastructure management spread from military planners to civilian engineers. In those ways, the investments that once bolstered power projection also contributed to societal resilience and connectivity. Geography's most durable lesson is humility. Empires have typically assumed their tools would be decisive, only to learn that endurance and local knowledge matter more than short-term dominance. In regions characterized by difficult terrain and resilient local societies, the land itself becomes a teacher. The pattern repeats across history. Invader arrives with superior tools. Local conditions create friction. Time, not technology, determines endurance. The graveyard of empires concept is therefore a cautionary tale for planners who underestimate the interplay of place and people. The human stories within these strongholds deserve emphasis. Workers, families, local merchants, and aid providers shape the daily life of these complexes. The presence of an installation changes labor markets, education opportunities, and social welfare. It brings outsiders and locals into constant contact, creating a hybrid culture that can be innovative and sometimes fragile. These micro-societies are testbeds for cultural exchange, and they often leave legacies long after the facilities themselves are repurposed or closed. From a strategic education perspective, understanding strongholds means studying for pillars: location, logistics, legitimacy, and adaptability. Location provides immediate advantage. Logistics sustain operations. Legitimacy secures long-term support. Adaptability ensures resilience. Neglect any pillar, and the entire structure becomes vulnerable. Successful planners treat these pillars as interconnected, not as separate boxes to check. And academic programs, case studies of strategic sites, teach students to think holistically, blending engineering, diplomacy, economics, and environmental science. Looking to the future, the concept of strongholds will continue to change. The rise of unmanned aerial systems, satellite constellations, and cyber infrastructure shifts some strategic emphasis away from giant physical complexes toward distributed networks. Yet even distributed systems need physical hubs, data centers, relay stations, maintenance depots. Geography remains relevant, albeit in new forms. Remote islands may give way to orbital relay platforms. Desert runways may be paralleled by undersea cable junctions. The physics of place, whether gravity wells or climate zones, will still shape how influence is projected. There is also an ethical dimension to consider. The creation and maintenance of strongholds raise questions about sovereignty, environmental impact, and social responsibility. Planners and policymakers now increasingly weigh sustainability, minimizing ecological footprint, and ensuring that local communities share benefits. The most enduring sites in the modern era are those that contribute positively to their surroundings rather than extract value from them. The history of strategic strongholds is therefore not simply a military tale. It is a human tale. It is about how people adapt to the presence of power, how communities find opportunity in logistics chains, and how technology translates into daily life. It is a study in contrasts, permanence versus mobility, dominance versus cooperation, symbolism versus substance. When students study these places, they learn not only about strategy, but about the intersection of engineering, policy, and human welfare. Finally, reflecting on the phrase "the graveyard of empires," we see that it encapsulates a much broader truth than one region's history. It is a reminder that power without grounding in place and people is transient. Empires rise on supply lines and fall when those lines fray. Strongholds are vital when they respect the logic of geography and human partnership. They are fragile when they ignore it. The most successful civilizations and the most responsible planners are those who balance ambition with humility. As we close this exploration, remember that maps are never static. They are living records of choices, innovations, and failures. Strongholds, whether ancient fortresses or modern hubs of aviation and logistics, are where those choices become most visible. They teach us that geography shapes possibilities, that logistics shape endurance, and that people ultimately shape history. The sky may be the newest frontier, but the ground below it still decides who endures.